Tracy Sable tonight on EWTN News Nightly. Pro-life laws, a report and reaction to the crucial vote in Ohio and what it could mean for the unborn. Border battle. House Republicans target the Biden administration over the issue of illegal immigration. Lasting legacy. A closer look at the life of a Hollywood director and his seminal movie about exorcisms. And sharing the good news. We hear testimonies from two celebrities and why they attended World Youth Day. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast of St. Teresa Benedicta of the Cross. Our top story tonight, in Ohio, voters rejected an initiative on constitutional amendments which could have ramifications for the pro-life movement. Issue 1 would have made it more difficult to pass a constitutional amendment and would have required a 60% threshold rather than the current measure of a simple majority. The results will make it easier for a proposed abortion referendum to succeed in November's upcoming election. When Washington, the Biden administration is reacting to the Ohio vote, calling it a win for democracy and saying the people in Ohio spoke loud and clear. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, who has been leading White House efforts to expand and promote abortion access, both issued statements after the voters in Ohio made their decision.
As he continues his trip in the western United States, President Joe Biden releases a one-paragraph statement writing, Ohio voters rejected an effort by Republican lawmakers and special interests to change the state's constitutional amendment process. This measure was a blatant attempt to weaken voters' voices and further erode the freedom of women to make their own health care decisions. And Vice President Kamala Harris, who has been holding roundtables on abortion access, tweeted this morning, last night democracy won. Ohioans overwhelmingly rejected an attempt by extremists and special interests to undermine the will of the people and a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. This victory makes clear when we organize, fight, and make our voices heard, we win. But SBA Pro-Life America released this statement saying in part, it is a sad day for Ohio and a warning for pro-life states across the nation. Millions of dollars and liberal dark money flooded Ohio to ensure they have a path to buy their extreme policies in a pro-life state. During this crucial election, progressives funneled in millions from outside groups to mislead the people of Ohio. Sadly, attacks on state constitutions are now the national playbook of the extreme pro-abortion left. Meanwhile, back out west in New Mexico, President Biden trying to convince inflation-weary Americans who believe the economy is in poor shape that his legislative successes are working. He says his policies of financial and tax incentives have revived U.S. manufacturing.
Our plan is working. It's working. The economy has grown since I took office. It grew faster in the last quarter than anyone expected.
The president spoke at a groundbreaking for a new wind tower manufacturing facility. And separately at the U.S. State Department.
The FBI has been accused of spying on Catholics here in the U.S. This based on a memo out of the FBI office. Congress has looked at this. Does that accusation of spying, the U.S. government, the FBI, spying on Catholics right here in the U.S., in any way undermine the State Department's ability to evaluate religious freedom globally?
I'm trying to think how I can answer that without commenting on an FBI matter, to which I should, of course, refer comment to the FBI and the Justice Department. But no, I don't think in any way, I will say it generally, I don't think in any way actions by the United States government with respect to any of these issues undermine our ability to speak out about repression overseas.
Now, tomorrow, President Biden continues his trip out west, stopping in Salt Lake City. Also tomorrow, the very latest inflation numbers come out. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Owen. Well, in Arizona, abortion advocates are also pushing for a ballot measure. If they collect enough signatures, installing abortion into the state constitution could be part of the 2024 election. Abortion currently is banned in Arizona after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And here with reaction to the Ohio vote and more is Amy Natoce of Protect Women Ohio, one of the major players behind Issue 1. Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. First off, I want to get your reaction to yesterday's vote. Are you at all surprised by the results?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. So yesterday's results were a direct result of out-of-state and even out-of-country special interest groups coming into Ohio with millions of dollars to buy deceptive advertising and really lie to Ohioans about what this amendment would do. So we saw even a Swiss billionaire using his liberal dark money groups to get involved. We saw tens of millions of dollars coming from out-of-state places like California, New York, D.C. to fund these deceptive advertisements. So it just goes to show what lengths these groups will go to alter Ohio's constitution. And that's exactly what we'll be facing in November.
Yeah, Amy, I'm curious too, what are you hearing from other pro-life groups in Ohio, regarding these results and elsewhere?
Yeah, so our coalition is really feeling emboldened now looking ahead to November. This shows what is at stake and how much we need to be communicating with other Ohioans and making sure they know exactly what is contained in the ACLU's dangerous anti-parent abortion amendment this November. This amendment would allow for painful late-term abortion all the way up until birth. And it somehow manages to go even further, going after women's health and safety protections in Ohio and going after parental rights. If this amendment passes in November, it will completely strip away parental consent and notification requirements so that minors can get abortions and even sex change procedures without their parents knowing about it. So our coalition is ready to go. They will not be outworked. And we know that once parents know what's in this amendment, they will stand with us to vote it down in November.
Yeah, and I understand the vote ended up being 57% to 43% against requiring a supermajority. But I wonder, if those numbers are the same for the pro-life vote, and is there even a way to tell?
So this vote in November will go so far beyond your typical pro-life, pro-abortion debate, and that's what's important to keep in mind. This amendment goes directly after parental rights, and every parent in Ohio needs to be concerned about this amendment. Even if doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, this cuts across all ideological lines, all demographics, and goes directly after a parent's rights and responsibility to be involved in their kids' lives. So we are feeling confident that when Ohioans know that, they will absolutely stand with us in voting down this amendment come November.
Amy, I quickly want to ask you about this. I want to talk about some other states here with parallels to Ohio. Pro-abortion groups in Arizona filed proposed language for a constitutional amendment with the Arizona Secretary of State's office Tuesday. Do you think pro-life groups in a place like Arizona should try to change the amendment threshold, or will Ohio's results make lawmakers kind of reconsider their tact in protecting against pro-abortion measures?
Yeah, so it's really a state-by-state case. Ohio is an interesting example. We are one of only 18 states that allows for outside groups to propose constitutional amendments. And of those 18 states, half of them, both Republican and Democrat, led states require more than a simple majority. So Ohio has had a very low threshold for decades. It's been a problem we've been looking to address for decades. And this year was finally when it got on the ballot, and Ohioans had a chance to right that wrong. So it's really a state-by-state case in Ohio. This was just a long overdue vote to put additional protections in place. And yesterday's results show exactly why we need more protections. The fact that out-of-state and out-of-country groups could come in and run deceptive ads shows why we needed to pass Issue 1.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you so much.
Well, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is criticizing the White House over an abortion policy. The Biden administration has proposed rules related to the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, and it could force businesses to make accommodations for women to receive an abortion. In response, USCCB Committee on Pro-Life Activities Chairman Bishop Michael Burbidge says, quote, "The act is pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-life. It is a total distortion to use this law as a means for advancing abortion and the complete opposite of needed assistance for pregnant mothers." While the flow of illegal immigrants and drugs across the southern border continues to draw the attention of U.S. lawmakers. Overall, numbers may be down, but that is not the case in Arizona, at least according to a group of House Republicans who are on the ground. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
Good evening, Tracy. You know, this week some House Republicans got an up-close look at the operations near Tucson, Arizona. No Democrats showed up for the field hearing to hear firsthand from law enforcement and others. Republicans say that the Biden administration has made a clear choice to ignore the border crisis.
The Biden administration continues to lean into failed policies that cause a catastrophe on our southwest border. It's a problem that requires oversight.
In the Tucson sector alone, Border Patrol apprehended over 40,000 illegal migrants in July, a 15-year high. The sheriff of Cochise County says the cartels are the real winners.
Their exploitation of mankind is simply modern-day slavery, allowing thousands of pounds of illicit drugs into our country that continue to erode the core values of families, schools, and subsequently killing Americans on an average of 290 every day. It's completely unacceptable at any level.
He adds it may get worse. The Biden administration is dropping most of the surveillance blimps with high-tech cameras, which law enforcement uses to track gotaways.
I was told this year that out of the 13 blimps, they were coming down at the end of this fiscal year, which is next month. There's only 4 left.
An Arizona rancher says illegal migrants are damaging his property.
I spend 50% of my time fixing fences, broken water lines, and getting cattle off the highway. During Trump's administration, we probably had 10 illegals a week on our ranch. Before Biden even took office with his promise to give amnesty to 11 million people, they started coming.
Meanwhile, Democrat lawmakers visited the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas.
It's barbaric. You see, they're basically treating these asylum seekers, these human beings, like animals. You see the razor wire here, you see right over there those barrel traps that have concertina wire on them.
In other news, House Oversight Committee Chair Congressman James Comer released more bank records today that they say details Hunter Biden's business relationship with Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, documenting $20 million paid by foreign sources to the Biden family. I'll have more on this story tomorrow. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, positive development in Haiti as an American nurse and her daughter, who were kidnapped recently in the Caribbean nation, have reportedly been set free. Alex Dorsanville and her daughter were taken from a clinic by armed men in late July. She was working for a Christian group at a clinic founded by her husband. The clinic praised God for answering their prayers with a nurse and daughter's safe release. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a lasting legacy. We remember the life of a well-known Hollywood director and his 1970s movie, The Exorcist, and testimonies from World Youth Day. William Friedkin, the Oscar-winning director of The Exorcist, died earlier this week in Los Angeles. In the 1970s, Friedkin directed both The Exorcist and The French Connection, making him one of the most highly sought-after Hollywood talents. The Exorcist was released back in 1973 and tells the story of a 12-year-old girl possessed by the devil. The movie received 10 Oscar nominations, winning 2 of the coveted statuettes. Friedkin died this week following a long illness. He was 87 years old. And we go now to Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, president and founder of the St. Michael Center for Spiritual Renewal, a nonprofit Catholic organization that oversees exorcism. He also is the author of The Diary of an American Exorcist. Monsignor Rossetti, great to have you back with us. There is so much to discuss. But first, I have to say, you would be really hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't seen or heard of The Exorcist. That said, why do you think the movie had such box office success? What was the attraction?
Well, Tracy, I think not only was it well produced in a way which stunned people and seemed realistic, but it was the content too. I think that for one of the first times in a while, you really had a sense of someone being possessed and an exorcism, and it was frightening to people. I think that it was something that they had not faced before, and people realized, this could be true.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the legacy of this movie will be?
Well, it kind of opened the door, and so did Father Gabriel Maher. The two, The Exorcist brought the exorcism to the large, big screen to the public, and then Father Gabriel Maher, through his books, kind of lifted the veil on what happens in an exorcism. The church has been very secretive, which it should be, on exorcism, but the public needs to know something about it. And that movie helped to push the needle forward.
Yeah, I want to talk about Father Maher in a minute, but I want to stick with The Exorcist right here. I mean, you are a real-life exorcist. From your perspective and experience, how realistic was the movie?
Well, the movie was obviously Hollywood. I mean, people's heads don't spin around and spit out pea green soup. The priest doesn't die. I mean, if an exorcist died, and every exorcism would all be gone, So there was a lot of Hollywood there. But actually, Tracy, it's based on a real case, and the notes from that were available, and I read them, and you can get them publicly. And it was a really a real case. And the young, it was a boy, by the way. We know his name now. It's Ronald Hinkler. He died in 2020, so he went on to live a happy life, and so it's based on a real case.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. I'm curious about this. I mean, what do you think movies like this about exorcisms, what do you think it can teach people?
Well, it teaches some people some good things and some bad things. It teaches people that the devil is real, that they need to go when someone's possessed. They need to go, frankly, to seek out a priest and to be prayed over, and that and in the end of that movie, which is true, is that the Lord conquers, of course, and casts out the demons. The negative part is that it doesn't really show you the power of God. It gives you a sense that the demons are all powerful. You begin to think that there's a God and Satan and that they're equal. No. Satan's an angel. He's a fallen angel. He is on a short leash, and God's in charge. And you don't get that in those movies.
Yeah, I want to talk about Father Maher now. A movie was recently released this year about him, The Pope's Exorcist. I saw it. I know you saw it. I want to get your thoughts on that and, what you thought about the movie and, how realistic is that as well about his life and how faithful is it to church teaching?
Well, there were some good things about it. For example, Father Maher, in this case, Russell Crowe, who I always love Russell Crowe, so that was a plus for the movie. But he said that exorcisms and full possessions are rare. So most of the people who come to him didn't need an exorcist, they needed a psychologist. So that was true. But a lot of the stuff, again, was very Hollywood. That there's this the Vatican plot. There's this big cover-up, and then he gets possessed, and again, that's just a lot of Hollywood stuff. So it's entertainment in some ways. There's some facts in it, but a lot of it's typical of what the Hollywood does to these things.
Yeah, there was another movie that was released this year about exorcisms. This one was a Christian film called Nefarious, a fictional account of a prisoner awaiting his execution and some claims that he makes about the devil. What do you know about this movie? And also, why do you think these types of movies, they continue to be produced, and there's a big fascination. Why is that?
Well, I did see Nefarious after 4 different exorcists told me that I should see it. They loved it. Now, this is very rare, by the way. Exorcists typically hate movies about exorcism because they're usually very Hollywoodish. But this movie actually, was better than good. And when I got through watching it, I felt like I'd been through an exorcism. You felt like you encountered the devil in that movie. It was so well done. Interestingly enough, 96% of the public liked it, but the critics hated it. Why? Because there was a lot of morality in there. They said it was a morality play. It talked about abortion as a murder. And euthanasia is murder and that sort of thing, and so I think the critics didn't like it from that, but the public realized there was a strong kernel of truth in that movie Nefarious, and I encourage people who are adults to see it.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left or so, but before I let you go, for those who aren't familiar with the St. Michael Center, could you quickly tell us about that, and if they want more information about it, how can they do so?
Well, we're at www.catholicexorcism.org, catholicexorcism.org. Lots of resources there for people, not just the possessed, of course, but for lots of people in terms of the spiritual warfare. And every month we have an online deliverance session. We have 15,000 people who sign up for it. And we have some social media. We had 7,000 views. So there's a lot of resources there for people around the world in English and some Spanish to access prayers, videos, books, and it's a great resource.
Yeah, well, Monsignor Rossetti, thank you so much for coming on. And we're also going to add another title to your many titles, movie critic. So
thanks, Tracy.
Thank you. God bless. All right, up next on EWTN News Nightly, a gift from God. Pope Francis holds his first general audience since the Vatican's summer break. Plus, we share two famous testimonies from World Youth Day. Pope Francis holds his first Wednesday talk with pilgrims following a summer break, and he uses it to reflect on the recently concluded World Youth Day, saying the nearly week-long event was, quote, an encounter with Christ.
Si alzò Maria e andò in fretta.
Well, the Holy Father also said the first World Youth Day following the pandemic felt to everyone as if it were a gift from God. Pope Francis praised the great numbers and the faith and enthusiasm of the young people. He also took time to pray for those in Slovenia and Georgia, where dozens of people have recently died in natural disasters. Well, finally tonight, during World Youth Day in Lisbon, Catholics and Evangelical Christians gathered for an event called The Change. Among the guests were a well-known actor and a musician. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Thonhauser has more.
Many pilgrims of the World Youth Day, but also other peoples from other denominations came here to the stadium to witness an event called The Change. And with me is Maher and Jonathan Roumie. Can you tell us a little bit more what kind of change we're talking about here?
I think the first thing is reflecting on the change that happens in the life of every believer when we meet the Lord. You know, as Catholics, every time we participate in the sacramental life of the church, there's a little transformation that's happening, right? Grace on grace, our lives slowly improving, being formed in the image of Christ. But then I think there's also another change that a lot of people here all felt compelled to sort of make a stand for, which is the change that happens when Christians, despite, hundreds of years of separation and division, that's, torn families apart, torn communities apart, wars have been fought over it, could somehow stand together and agree on a prayer that Jesus himself prayed in John 17, that his followers would be as close to each other as he is with his own Father.
I think the fact that there is this concerted effort towards unity in the body of Christ that is blessed, so to speak, by the Pope himself.
And everyone on that stage tonight loves that Jonathan's Catholic and loves that I'm Catholic. They wouldn't want us to be anything different. And it represents, that's what I'm saying, like it represents kind of a radical shift, I think, in what a lot of people have thought of, maybe when they think of ecumenism. And Bishop Barron talks about ecumenism 2.0, which is sort of like, I think it's rooted in friendship and relationship, and then it's robust dialogue. But when you're doing something together, it creates a foundation and a friendship.
That was also today very interesting. It's not about giving things up about your faith or the particular denomination, but really finding what unites us.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think when we do that, it creates common ground. And then the real dialogue, because there are real theological differences. You can't pretend they don't exist. But you're not going to solve them in an arena with 65,000 young people.
Art reaches into the heart and the emotions and the soul, and then so people, once you start getting there, once you start doing that, then everything else opens up. The heart has to open up before the mind.
I think it carries on the legacy of John Paul the Great and Pope Benedict and what their vision of the promise of what World Youth Day could be. John Paul II started World Youth Day because he knew the youth are not the church of tomorrow, they are the church of today. And we need their energy and vitality.
What do you hope that the young people who came here to this event will take with them?
Renewed zeal to dialogue with people that, may not believe exactly what they do, but to hold fast to, especially as a Catholic, to hold fast to the things that you abide by, the sacramental life, and to be, I think, witnesses as to why we believe what we believe, to be able to share that in love with people, to draw people into it.
Just an incredible event there. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.